Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Artem MMA and I'm going to be talking about PFL number 5 in the 2023 regular season. It's going to be the heavyweights and the women's featherweight. It could be an interesting card, it could be really fun, or it could be really not so fun. Now, I am coming off a very good card last week, which was on a Thursday night. This card's going to be on the Friday night, where I went 11-1. The one loss being the Brendan Loughnane pick. I got that one wrong, and that was the last leg of an 8-leg parlay, which I had on the We Want Picks Premium. That really sucks, man. And also, it's probably pretty bad for PFL, because Brendan Loughnane's one of their biggest names, and he just got kicked out of the whole tournament with that first round's loss. Now, going into this event here, it should be pretty fun. Very interesting venue. It's going to be at the Overtime Elite Arena, if you know anything about NBA. I don't know too much personally, but I understand Overtime Elite is like a development team, and they've got like a really fancy arena. So it's going to be interesting to see how this MMA event takes place in the arena. But yeah, let's just get straight into the picks. But before we do, you can get the We Want Picks Premium. You can get a 3-day free trial, cancel at any time membership when you sign up using my code ARTEM. You sign up to the We Want Picks Premium membership, put in ARTEM, you can cancel at any time. And now with that being said, let's get straight into the picks. And kicking off the card is what I'm assuming is going to be a bonus fight, which should be a very interesting one. It is going to be two heavyweight fighters, and Denzel Freeman is probably like the A side for the PFL fights, because Denzel Freeman has a very good wrestling background, and he has translated it quite well into an MMA career. He's 4-0 as a professional. He's 4-1 as an amateur, with one loss to Johnny Evelyn, who has gone on to do great things over at Bellator. All of his wins are not really over the best fighters in the world, but he's managed to make it look somewhat easy against most of them. Isaiah Pinson himself has managed to fight some pretty good opponents. In fact, he actually did fight for the PFL 3 months ago and beat a 4-0 opponent. But I think Denzel Freeman might be able to get this one done. Well, I think he should be able to get this one done using his elite wrestling background and just more experience in MMA in general. I think he should be able to get it done. But it's going to be an interesting fight. Do you really want to lay minus 245 on a low-level heavyweight fight? Two heavyweight prospects. Someone could get KO'd here. Personally, I think you just avoid this one. This next fight here is going to be quite interesting, because it's Patrick Brady taking on Jordan Heiderman. And Jordan Heiderman, if you guys can remember, was on The Ultimate Fighter Season 30. And Jordan Heiderman was one of my picks to win the whole thing. I was actually quite impressed with him kind of going into it. And he just didn't really seem to have the best sort of run on The Ultimate Fighter. He did manage to beat Chandler Cole, who's going to be on Dana White's Contender Series this year. But then he lost to Zach Pauga, who has ended up in the UFC. And now he's going to be in PFL. He's taking on Patrick Brady. And Patrick Brady's got a very interesting career. He's 39 years old, but he's 5-0. But my problem with Patrick Brady is this guy just hasn't really fought the best guys in the world, man. And both guys have pretty similar styles for heavyweights. Jordan Heiderman and Brady are both wrestlers and grapplers for the most part. And I like Jordan Heiderman's youth. I like the fact that he's so much younger than Brady. And I like the level of competition this guy's fought. At the end of the day, this guy has gone a season off The Ultimate Fighter. He's probably got some very high level training with the coaches there. And he's kind of translated it into a very good recent submission win over a 3-0 opponent. I think he should be able to beat Patrick Brady. Brady's an old guy. He's 39 years old. I think Heiderman finishes him in the first or the second round. Olena Kolesnyk versus Yoko Higashi. Now, Yoko Higashi really did not look very good in her last fight. She is 37 years old, but she had a pretty successful career over in Japan before she came over to the PFL. Yes, she didn't beat a good opponent there, but she beat Ryan and Mura twice for a couple of bouts over in Japan. But man, she did not look very good at all against Marina Mokhnatkina. Mokhnatkina was just kind of able to hit her with anything she threw, and Yoko Higashi just didn't look that good. And taking on a girl like Olena Kolesnyk, who is a striker. Olena Kolesnyk, for the most part, is a striker, and she just beat Aspen Ladd. What's going on, man? Aspen Ladd has really had a massive fall from grace since just kind of getting cut from the UFC. And yeah, like Olena Kolesnyk, a striker for the most part. And honestly, if Yoko Higashi kind of shows up the same way she did against Marina Mokhnatkina, Olena Kolesnyk will probably knock her out. I'm actually going to pick Olena Kolesnyk by knockout in this matchup here. Kolesnyk does get high-level striking training. She fights out of Tiger Muay Thai. She is a pure striker for the most part. And yeah, I just think Yoko Higashi might get KO'd in this matchup. So I'm actually going to go with Olena Kolesnyk by knockout in this fight. Now we move on to a very interesting fight again because Julia Budd is now taking on Martina Jindrova, and I think this is good odds for Julia Budd. You know, Julia Budd, you're looking at her now, she's on a 3-fight losing streak, she's almost 40 years old, but if you were going to bet on a women's MMA fight, this would probably not be a bad women's MMA fight to bet on the Julia Budd side. I know she's 40 years old, but she really should be able to beat Martina Jindrova. Now, Martina Jindrova is a fantastic kickboxer. She's got a great kickboxing background, I believe a professional background in kickboxing and Muay Thai. But Julia Budd is very well-rounded, and although she's losing, she has been putting up good performance in losses. She lost to Larissa Pacheco, but she did give Larissa Pacheco trouble every now and then. She lost to Aspen Ladd. Close fight, split decision, could argue it goes either way. Gave Aspen Ladd trouble. Has it aged well? Not really at all. And then she did lose to Gina Fabian, but Fabian missed weight in that fight and was just massive. So I actually think that Julia Budd is going to win this fight. I think she's going to win by decision. Martina Jindrova just got knocked out 2 months ago. That's not very good for a return, you know what I mean? And she did lose to Kayla Harrison, but that happens, you know. Martina Jindrova, very, very good striker, good striking background, got KO'd against Amber Leibrock, and now she's taking on Julia Budd, who had a fantastic career in Bellator before all of the recent losses. She actually had a really good career, lots of good wins. Her only losses to Chris Cyborg, Ronda Rousey, and Amanda Nunes. Now, like those losses, they kind of happen, right? And I think Budd is going to win by decision in this matchup as a nearly 40-year-old. The next one is Danilo Marques taking on Marcelo Nunes. I'm going to pick Danilo Marques here. Now, Marcelo Nunes, man, really, really let me down in his last fight, dude. I picked him to beat Maurice Greene because Maurice Greene has notoriously had very bad takedown defense in his past. And Maurice Greene was able to defend the takedowns. Marcelo Nunes gassed out, honestly, in about 3 minutes. And Greene just beat him up from there. Marcelo Nunes had absolutely nothing for him. And then Danilo Marques, you know, Danilo Marques is probably coming off one of the best performances of his career, where he managed to beat up Yorgan de Castro on the feet of all places. Danilo Marques is a grappler, and he managed to beat up Yorgan de Castro on the feet. It was actually a fantastic career highlight, I guess, for him in a way. But I think Danilo Marques can beat Marcelo Nunes here. Both guys are grapplers. Marcelo Nunes, what he likes to do is he likes to take people down. He likes to get on top and work for the arm triangle choke. It is his like specialty. That's kind of like all he does. But if he can't get you down, he just gassed out. He gassed out in like 2 or 3 minutes against Maurice Greene. I think Danilo Marques can keep this fight at range. He's 6'6" with a big reach. I think he can fight from range. He showed 3-round cardio against Yorgan de Castro. I think he can beat up Marcelo Nunes on the feet. And maybe later on in the fight when Nunes gasses out, because he will gas out, Danilo Marques could maybe go for a submission or a late finish. So I'm going to go with Danilo Marques by decision, or maybe he can get like a 2nd or 3rd round finish if Nunes gasses out as bad as he did in his last fight. This next fight is interesting. It's going to be Marina Mokhnatkina taking on Evelyn Martins, and it's women's MMA and it's women's featherweight, and I'm really just pretty horrible at picking women's MMA. Now, I think Marina Mokhnatkina really could win this fight, and I actually have been very, very tempted to pick Marina Mokhnatkina in this fight for various reasons, because she's fought much, much better competition than Evelyn Martins, and she's also got a really good Sambo background. If I'm not mistaken, she's a world Sambo champion a few years ago. She's a European Sambo champion a few years ago as well, and she is a good fighter. You know, she beat up Yoko Higashi before that, but before that she did fight for a Russian local organization, RCC. She beat Abby Montez in a close fight, and I think there's a very good chance she can beat Evelyn Martins, because Evelyn Martins, in my opinion, she's only 20 years old, and this girl really hasn't fought anyone that good. She took a big step up in competition against Karolina Sobek, and she did look good in that fight. But I'm actually going to just pick against Evelyn Martin here. I'm going to pick against the undefeated fighter. I am going to go with Marina Mokhnatkina. I like the experience against high levels of competition. I just don't like Evelyn Martin only being 20 years old, and we haven't really seen her tested yet. I think Marina Mokhnatkina can test Evelyn Martins here. Maybe it's a bad pick, but I just remember when I was watching Evelyn Martins fights, I was thinking about potentially picking Karolina Sobek to beat her. You know what I mean? Because Karolina Sobek, which we'll get to later because she is on this card, is a specialist in grappling, and then Evelyn Martins can do it all, but she likes to clinch against the cage, she likes to do all sorts of things. But Marina Mokhnatkina, with that Sambo background, with that wrestling base, with everything that she's got, she might be able to outmuscle Evelyn Martins, who's just kind of used to being much bigger than all of her opponents. So give me Marina Mokhnatkina to actually win this fight by decision. I think I'm in a minority here. Maybe that's a bad pick, but I'm going to go with it. Now let's move on to Denis Goltsov taking on Yorgan De Castro, and I'm going to pick Denis Goltsov, but you are paying a tax on this line at -800. I think keep Denis Goltsov out of your parlays at -800. He's not adding much value whatsoever, and although Yorgan De Castro isn't really the best fighter in the world, he is still dangerous enough to potentially knock out Denis Goltsov. So I'm going to pick Goltsov, but I really don't just throw him mindlessly into a parlay. You know what I mean? Like, I think Denis Goltsov at -800, he's not adding a lot of value. I'm going to pick him to win. He's the more well-rounded fighter. He can crack, he can swing and bang, he can knock people out. Like, he just did manage to knock out Cesar Ferreira, but Cesar Ferreira took him on short notice. And I think Ferreira, if I'm not mistaken, he had a UFC run. He was at like welterweight or something like that. It was a weird fight. It was a short notice fight. He managed to beat up Maurice Greene. I believe Maurice Greene actually had John Jones in his corner for that fight, but he managed to out-wrestle him in that fight there. The thing is with Denis Goltsov, he can knock people out on the feet, but he can also out-wrestle people, and he's just going to go out there and out-wrestle Yorgan De Castro, who is pretty much a pure striker, and he just got beaten up on the feet by Danilo Marques. Not really a good look. He was on his way to losing to Junior Dos Santos, but Dos Santos hurt his shoulder. It's just kind of like, you know, like, I think Denis Goltsov just beats up Yorgan De Castro. I think he takes him down. I think he ground and pounds him out. First or second round KO finish. Also, I think a lot of these guys will be going for finishes because they want to get into the top 8. But I think Goltsov gets it. I think he finishes Yorgan De Castro in the first 2 rounds. And now we move on to Renan Ferreira taking on Matheus Scheffel. Now, Matheus Scheffel is a very interesting case, man. Like, this guy, I don't know how he did it. But where was it? He managed to beat Bruno Capoloza last year, and that is honestly probably one of the weirdest performances of all time. And if you actually look at that card, there's actually a couple of really big underdogs winning that card. So maybe there was something going on. I'm not going to say anything, but dude, that was a weird card, and this was a weird fight. I've got no idea how he managed to beat Bruno Capoloza. They rematched recently. Of course, Bruno Capoloza knocked him out. But he just it's a no contest. You know, Capoloza, he burns a hole in the test cup. I'll just say that much. But Matheus Scheffel, this guy's chin is always to worry about, especially at heavyweight when he's taking on powerful strikers. You look at these losses. He has 7 losses by knockout, and one of them is actually against Capoloza, which happened recently. So you could actually say that he's got multiple losses by KO. He's probably got like 8 losses by KO with that no contest that he got recently. And that loss by KO was 2 months ago. He was knocked out 2 months ago, and now he's coming back. This is why I don't like PFL's format all that much. Because guys that were KO'd 2 months ago are just coming back. Now, as for Renan Ferreira's had an interesting career. You know, he kind of come on the map when he, quote-unquote, beat up, Fabricio Verdum, but it turns out Fabricio Verdum had a submission in, and Ferreira tapped, but he actually got a couple of good wins in his career. He took on Carl Sayman, who just cannot be finished, but then in 30 seconds, he KOs Stuart Austin. In 25 seconds, he KOs Jamal Jones, and then just kind of goes on a bit of a losing streak, man. He just hasn't been the guy we all wanted him to be, you know what I mean? And, yeah, I think Renan Ferreira does knock out Matheus Scheffel, though. After all of that, I think he does KO Matheus Scheffel in the first 2 rounds. Probably in the first round. Probably in the first 2 minutes. Matheus Scheffel, this guy, man, you cannot trust this guy's chin. He gets KO'd all the time. He gets KO'd often. He's getting KO'd by lesser opponents than Renan Ferreira. Renan Ferreira, for the most part, I would probably almost describe him almost as a grappler. But he can crack on the feet. He can strike. He's massive. He's 6'8". Matheus Scheffel's a former light heavyweight. This guy is not... I know he just weighed at 260 pounds, but he's not that big for heavyweight. Renan Ferreira is going to knock this guy out in the first round, and very likely in the first 90 seconds. Now we move on to the next fight on the main card. Aspen Lad taking on Karolina Sobek. And what a pretty bad fall from grace it's been for Aspen Ladd, right? I don't know what's going on because she's only 28 years old still. She's still arguably not even reaching her prime yet, and she's just having very, very bad performances. She couldn't make weight when she was fighting for the UFC. She was missing weight all the time, constantly cancelled fights, all this and that. And she was when she was showing up to fights, she was missing weight, but it wasn't like that at the start. You know, she was really having a lot of success in her career. She was winning fights by finish. She was winning fights by knockout, ground and pounds, TKO over decent opponents, and now she just kind of fallen off. She really has, you know, after a couple of cancelled fights, the UFC were just kind of like, nah, we're not doing this anymore. You keep missing weight, you keep missing your fights and all that. And then she comes in and she loses to Olena Kolesnyk. I believe at one point, Aspen Ladd was a top 10 ranked opponent. I think she was ranked like number 8 in the division at some point. It was crazy. And now she's in the PFL losing to fighters that are 7-5. And now she's only a -200 favorite over Karolina Sobek, who just lost to the 4-0 Evelyn Martins. Like, I think once again, Aspen Ladd is a fighter that you probably could bet on. You are going to be betting on Aspen Ladd at an all-time low right now. I don't know what Aspen Ladd's doing. I don't know how she's managed to have this massive fall from grace where she was looked at as a top prospect at one point, and now all of a sudden, I don't know what's happened. I don't know if it was because she got injured at one point, but all of a sudden, she's just not the same Aspen Ladd she was a few years ago, and now she's just going to be a -200 favorite over a 4-1 Karolina Sobek, who is very one-dimensional. And what I mean by that is Karolina Sobek, almost every single one of these fights, she does the exact same thing. She goes in close against her opponents, she takes them down with a trip, and she ends up in like the scarf hold, and she just submits them like that. That's what she's got. She's a specialist in that position. I guess I don't really know how to describe it because I'm not a grappler myself. If you guys do know, I do box, but I don't grapple. But I don't really know how to describe the position she's in. But when she does take opponents down and she ends up on top, kind of like on the top of their chest, sideways, she's a specialist in that position. But Aspen Ladd has good wrestling. She won't get herself put in those positions. She's a horrible striker, though. I forgot about that, actually. Aspen Ladd, she loves to punch air. She's got no range management whatsoever. She loves to punch air, and she just... I don't know what Aspen Ladd's doing, man. I know that was a really, really harsh breakdown on Aspen Ladd, but I just don't know what's going on. She's kind of stopped going for takedowns. She stopped wrestling. I have no idea what's going on in her career. Something has changed, and it hasn't changed for the better. Now we move on. Biagio Ali Walsh is taking on Travell Miller. And this is another fight where just don't blindly put it in your parlays, man. I think there's definitely better fights that you can parlay on this card, aside from the Biagio Ali Walsh making his professional debut. And I'm going to be honest about Biagio Ali Walsh. I thought this guy was going to be an amateur for a much longer period of time. And it seems like his team wants him to go pro now. And I guarantee you this. PFL is going to build this guy up very slowly, kind of like Bellator likes to do. And if you do look at his career, he's 3-1 as an amateur. If you don't actually know, by the way, Biagio Ali Walsh is the grandson of Muhammad Ali. But with that being said, you know, he went 3-1. He went 2-0 in the PFL cage, knocked out a couple of decent guys. You know, he does have good striking. That's kind of what he does. But Travell Miller, you know, this guy is coming in here with nothing to lose. You know, he went 3-2 as an amateur. He's looking to make his pro debut. He could just go out there and try and knock him out. You know, it seems like he's got a little bit of a kickboxing background. And Biagio Ali Walsh has been brought in to win. Who knows? You know, it's a good opportunity for Travell Miller to maybe make his name for himself. I'm picking Biagio Ali Walsh by KO. But this is a good opportunity. This is not a fight which I would put my money on, because you never really know with these guys making their pro debut. I think Ali Walsh is going to be brought up very, very slowly by his team and by the PFL. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if his next opponent was against a guy that's like 1-5 or 2-4 or something. He's going to be brought up very, very slowly. Now we move on to the co-main event. Larissa Pacheco taking on Amber Leibrock. Now, Larissa Pacheco will win this fight. She will win this fight, absolutely. She's a very well-rounded fighter. She's a good fighter. She just beat Kayla Harrison, and she showed really good grappling. And then when she showed up and fought Julia Budd, she all of a sudden didn't look like the same fighter anymore. You know, her cardio wasn't really there. Maybe it was because she had to cut down to 145 pounds, which she was used to fighting at 155. but I don't really know what happened in that fight. Larissa Pacheco did not look like the same Larissa Pacheco that fought against Kayla Harrison and also these previous opponents and was just knocking everybody out. But Larissa Pacheco will win this fight, and the reason why I say that is Amber Leibrock. Really, really good win, to be fair, against Martina Jindrova. Knocked her out with the head kick. Did not see that coming, but my thing with Amber Leibrock is if you watch any of her fights that's not her PFL fight, man, she's just not fighting the best opponents, like, at all, dude. Like, and on top of that as well, every time she fights someone, she's significantly bigger than them because she's 6 foot tall. Larissa Pacheco's 5'6" herself, but man, like these girls that Leibrock is fighting, they're just not impressive, like whatsoever. Like I remember Morgan Fryer fought her, and Morgan Fryer was just running forward with the Juliana Pena striking, but worse, dude. Like it's just crazy. I think Larissa Pacheco, she's a really, really good fighter. I really hope Larissa Pacheco maybe makes it back to the UFC at some point. Maybe she can maybe make 135 pounds again. But I will just say, Larissa Pacheco, I know she's a man at minus 12,000 favorite right now, but she really didn't seem to have the best performance against Julia Budd. She didn't really kind of go, like, run straight through Julia Budd like I kind of thought she might, especially after a performance against Kayla Harrison. But I'm sure she probably will win this fight. I'm sure she will finish this fight. Maybe not a first round finish, but I think she probably will be able to get it done, probably in the second or the third round. Now we move on. Ante Delija taking on Maurice Greene. The battle of who gets to fight Francis Ngannou. Am I right? I mean, if Francis Ngannou doesn't get the Deontay Wilder MMA fight, I think these two are probably fighting right now for the opportunity to fight against Francis Ngannou next year in MMA. But it sounds like Ngannou's got a boxing fight with Wilder and then an MMA fight with Wilder. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens there. But Ante Delija just beat what am I on about? Is taking on Maurice Greene in the main event of this fight, and he should beat Maurice Greene. But I am going to say this. Maurice Greene is coming off probably the best performance of his career, where he showed the best takedown defense he's ever showed before against Marcelo Nunes, and Marcelo Nunes completely gassed out in that fight. Like when we've seen Maurice Greene lose in the past, we're seeing Maurice Greene getting taken down and controlled for a very long period of time, often regularly as well. And we kind of saw a bit of that as well against Denis Goltsov. Ante Delija can do that too. Ante Delija, he hasn't fought for the PFL season yet, so he's going to be wanting to try and get that first round finish, because if he wants to be in the PFL playoffs, he has to get a first round finish or a second round finish, I'm assuming, to be kind of all part of that. So Delija's going to be coming in here trying to take Maurice Greene's head off, and honestly, he probably can do that, and he probably will do that. Ante Delija, he's a decent fighter. I think he can run forward and probably find the knockout over Maurice Greene. If he has to, he can wrestle, but you've got to kind of consider the situation Ante Delija is in right now. Ante Delija needs a first round finish to kind of beat over all of these other guys and get himself into the PFL playoffs and potentially fight for that $1 million again. So give me Ante Delija. I'm going to go with him by KO in this matchup. And with it all wrapped up, that's the end of my predictions for this PFL card. I was a little bit harsh, I think, maybe on a couple of the fighters, including Aspen Ladd. But, yeah, just unfortunately for Aspen Ladd, we just really have seen a big decline in her career recently. So maybe she can get things back on track with a win this weekend. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the picks. Hopefully you guys are going to watch the card. It should be a fun one, and I will see you guys in the next one.